What should you be playing for Season 1 of Diablo 4? We've looked at all 5 classes after the massive patch that nerfed most of the most popular builds, and we look to see what classes are still actually viable, and more importantly, if you're looking to play the strongest class for Season 1 of Diablo 4, we're going to be looking at all 5 of them today and ranking them in terms of the ones that are probably the least effective all the way up to the strongest class for this upcoming season, starting actually tomorrow. So having said that, let's dive in. Up at number 5 is the Sorcerer class. Unfortunately, the Sorcerer class saw some big nerfs in terms of its survivability. Keep in mind that prior to this big nerf patch, the Sorcerer already was the squishiest class, and Sorcerers didn't get much to help them survive high-ranking content. Now, on top of this, not only did we see armor nerf, we saw many defensive affixes nerfed as well. This means that pushing high nightmare dungeons are going to be even more challenging for Sorcerer, which, by the way, doesn't have a reliable source of unstoppable. Keep in mind that unstoppable is a way that you can avoid CC, which unfortunately in today's world of Diablo 4, there's a lot of it. There's an endless amount of CC. In fact, there's also no DR on CC, which means that you can get CC'd over and over again. On top of this, the Blizzard Stagger build was nerfed as well. So because of Sorcerers no longer having this in-game bossing build, on top of being fairly squishy, we placed them at number 5 on our rankings of Diablo 4 classes. Up at number 4 is unfortunately a class that it hurts me to put it at this number because I leveled it all the way to 100, the Barbarian class sitting at number 4. Barbarians unfortunately have had a number of nerfs all the way back since release. They've had a couple of aspects that were heavily nerfed, and then most recently their strongest skill, Hammer of the Ancients, was just bug fixed to now do about 1/10 of the damage that it was doing before. I won't get into the details of how this bug worked because it no longer matters, but Barbarian does not have a reliable source of doing large amounts of damage. One benefit they do have is Unstoppable. Barbarians prior to this patch could have permanent uptime on their Unstoppable thanks to permanent shouts. Now, shouts were something that if you wanted to have them up all the time, you had to invest heavily into cooldown reduction, as well as look for a certain aspect on a ring called the Bold Chieftain's aspect that was incredibly rare. Since the nerf patches come out, cooldown reduction has been nerfed 30%. It was already very difficult to get permanent uptime on the shouts, and now because cooldown reduction has been nerfed, it's going to be even more difficult, maybe even impossible to have that permanent uptime. That means that Barbs are going to have a tougher time in in-game dungeons, not to mention the armor and survivability nerfs makes Barbs even more of a challenge in the in-game. They already weren't doing significant amounts of damage, especially compared to other classes, and with some of these nerfs, specifically crit damage and vulnerability damage, Barbs really don't have a lot of viable options when it comes to both bossing and in-game pushing. I expect to see a variety of new builds pop up for Barb, but until more of those rise up, we're going to put Barb at number 4 on our list. Number 3, we're going to put the Necromancer class. I would say if you do number 3 or number 2, you're going to be totally fine. Now, the Necromancer had one of its most powerful skills nerfed, Bone Spear. However, with the nerf, they still are able to kill Uber Lilith in under 2 minutes. It's still an incredible skill. We also saw some buffs to their minions. Now, most of these buffs were around the damage that they deal. The biggest problem with minions in Diablo 4 is that they die fairly quickly, and we didn't get much to improve their survivability. It's more than likely that most Necromancers are going to continue to go Bone Spear, especially because some of the new items give you an additional bonus when you don't have your minions. So expect to see this already strong build continue to be strong, and that puts our Necromancer at number 3. Keeping in mind that the number 2 class is very close to the number 3 class, at number 2 we put the Druid. Now, the Druid had an incredibly powerful build, the Shred Tornado build. This was up on the chopping block for the nerf patch that just came out. However, this build is actually still very strong. There's a video circulating of this build absolutely destroying Uber Lilith. It will continue to be very strong for in-game dungeons. However, Druids are at the risk of being a bit squishier, again because of the armor and defensive nerf. Now, will it be enough to keep people from running melee characters? I'm not sure. Again, I think if you run a Druid or a Necromancer, you're going to be fine. But again, Druid's still doing an incredible amount of damage with their most popular Tornado build. Finally, at number 1, which in my opinion sits heads and shoulders above any other class, the Rogue class. The Rogue class looks absolutely insane for Season 1 of Diablo 4. Now, I'll tell you that prior to the nerf patch, rogues were already doing an insane amount of damage. If you like doing PvP, rogues were arguably the strongest there as well, with maybe the exception being Hoda Barbs, which again got nerfed in this latest patch. So rogues will continue to do a large amount of damage. Their ranged build got buffed as well, though I think many players are still going to be going the melee build. Now, they did get one nerf in the form of lingering strikes getting slightly nerfed. However, they're amazing at bossing. Like I said, they're amazing at PvP, and they're really strong in nightmare dungeons. They're also an extremely mobile class, which many people know that in ARPGs, the faster you can move, the more monsters you can kill, and the more loot you can acquire. And that's why we put Rogue at number 1 for the best class for Diablo 4's Season 1. What class are you going to play? Let us know and enjoy Season 1. We'll be here continuing to create more content around it. We'll see you soon.